This is 102.3 WHIV LPFM in New Orleans. We are community radio dedicated to human rights and social justice. We are broadcasting live uptown on the Tulane campus from Unrig the System Summit, and with me today is the founder of the Young Turks, as well as Wolfpack, Cenk Uyger. Thank you so much
thank you
for being here with us. You know, I started WHIV as an independent radio station to provide a platform to have conversations that I refer to as being truthful. For example, we have conversations on WHIV where we start from the place where women should have autonomy over the body, not whether or not they should have autonomy. Conversations start there. We start our conversations not whether or not the climate is changing, but climate has changed, and our conversations start there. We have conversations where we don't talk about whether or not guns are or it may not be a problem. We know they are a problem. Start our conversations there. As a physician, for me, a single-payer system, it's not whether or not it is better. We know that it is better. As a physician and in my medical world, I can't make a statement or I can't publish without having some sort of statistical analysis that talks about how truthful my statement is. But now we're in a time where news is fake, the state is deep, and if people don't like how things are going, they defer to that, and I find that to be incredibly problematic as I kind of look out into where the future brings. And I just wanted to know, from your perspective, what can we do as independent media to kind of right that wrong and bring the news and to bring the conversation back to where there's a level of sanity and truthfulness to it?
So sometimes the establishment media paints independent media as the problem. I actually think it's a solution. And I'll tell you why. So why do people believe in alternate realities? And now 61% of Republicans believe that Donald Trump is going to be overthrown by the deep state. Like, that's crazy, right? So, but why have we gotten to that point? Well, it's because the establishment media did lie to people over and over and over again, and the establishment politicians likewise. And so people lost trust of their government, they lost trust in the media, and that's why we're in the dark place that we are now with reality and alternate reality. And so how did they lie to them? Oh, the politicians are having honest debates about policy, and they're not corrupted by the money. That's an outrageous charge, right? Well, that's preposterous. You know, 93% of Americans believe that politicians serve their donors, not their voters. But on television, they keep telling you the opposite. No, these are honorable gentlemen who are having honest discussions, and to say that they have been corrupted by the donor money is an outrage. I mean, every time anybody said that about Hillary Clinton, or even said 10% of that about Hillary Clinton, every anchor on television would foam at the mouth with outrage. Okay, well, the government told us they weren't spying in on us until we found out they were spying in on us. And then all the media and all the government told us that's okay. No, the Fourth Amendment doesn't say you need a warrant. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. This is clearly unconstitutional, right? And on and on and on. So after suffering through that for decades, now the American people have lost the trust of the system. So it's on us in independent media to find a way to regain that trust, to say, look, here is the realities, here are the facts. And so now there'll be another part of independent media that's right-wing that'll tell them the falsehoods. But you know, as Martin Luther King quoted others, but he said it in his own wonderful way that resonated with me. You know, truth forever on the scaffold, false and things and lies. As you can tell, I butchered the quote. King did it a lot better, to say the least, 1,000 times better. Forever wrong. I'm sorry, that's what it was. Wrong forever on the throne. But that scaffold sways the future. And it does. So it's our job to make sure that we lay the foundation for people understanding what reality is.
So to bring the conversation then, that's a great segue back to why we're actually here right now, and certainly your second passion besides the Young Turks is obviously Wolfpack. And for me, I'm strongly motivated because I think that a key part of unrigging the system is removing money from politics. You remove money from politics, obviously the incentive is removed from all entities for which the establishment lives, and they start serving the people again because that's who actually puts them in office. To me, I see that the establishment media, the way it stands, they serve to gain the way the system and the establishment is now, because all that money that gets funneled through a politician that's ultimately gets funneled into the establishment media, they're the ones that are making the money from this to run ads and campaign promotions and this sort of stuff. So maybe we could just talk about very quickly about the 28th Amendment and your work with Wolfpack.
That's right. And you're absolutely right to point out the reason that television doesn't talk about this issue is because billions of dollars in political advertising goes towards television. So they're part of the problem. They don't want to fix it. Their business model is dependent on corruption. So the 28th Amendment is to get money out of politics. There's several different ways to do that. One way is to end the private financing of elections. If private interests finance elections, then politicians work for private interests, not for the public interest. So they don't represent us, they represent their donors. And that's obviously the state of affairs that we have now. The great thing about the Constitution is it was written by revolutionaries, literally. And they built revolution into the document. That's called an amendment. And Thomas Jefferson said you should do one every generation. We haven't done one in a long time, and the establishment hates those kind of revolutions. They are in favor of the status quo. So as strongly as the Republican Party is fighting us, now the Democratic establishment is fighting us even harder. They say, don't do a convention to get an amendment. Oh my God, that's scary. That might bring change. Exactly. We need change. And so there's two ways to get an amendment. One is 2/3 of Congress can propose it. The other is 2/3 of the states can have a convention that proposes it. Okay, but either way, 3/4 of the states have to ratify it. It's actually pretty hard to get an amendment, as everybody knows. But luckily we have 93% of the people on our side, so it's a little bit easier on this one. You're never going to get it through a corrupt Congress. You have to call for a convention to propose one. So that's Wolfpack's method of doing it, wolf-pack.com.
One more question, if that's okay. Sometimes taking in the news is in the last 18 months or so is almost like kind of drinking from a fire hose. But I think two important stories were broke by The Intercept, I think 2 weeks ago. One was this potential for a privatized army and military. And while that's problematic, and we're addressing that on WHIV, the second one I think was equally as problematic, and that was how the DCCC is undermining or kneecapping. And I think this kind of segues into what you were just talking about, how the Democratic Party is making it difficult. You know, when Obama talked about grab a clipboard and go out and get names and run for office, for me it's just so disheartening that even when we are mounting a campaign to fight against the right wing and the Republican Party, now we're then also being undermined by the Democratic Party. And I just was wondering for some final thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I agree with you on both of those stories being huge. The privatized CIA, as if the real CIA wasn't bad enough, right? It's just insanity. And the guy who ran Blackwater
Eric Prince
is likely to run that mercenary CIA, which is insanity. And so many people voted for it in that budget bill. So now to the DCCC story, we actually broke the
I'm
memo.
I'm so sorry.
No, that's
okay.
okay. And Intercept built upon it, and they gave us credit for it.
My apologies.
No, not at all. And so TYT Network overall has perspective, but different perspectives from the different hosts. But we have a branch called TYT Investigates that is just objective without a perspective, and they're the ones who found the DCCC memo from the candidates. And what it told the candidates was really interesting stuff. First of all, don't fight. Well, in a primary that doesn't make any sense, right? Well, the whole point is...
It makes sense if you're putting your thumb on the scale
especially
to
for,
lean in one direction.
That's right, especially if you're supporting incumbents.
Yes.
Incumbents benefit from a lack of primaries, obviously, and a lack of real contest in those primaries. Okay, point two was, after the primaries, you must support the other guy. Okay, that's the least offensive part, but I would still say depends. What did the other guy do, right? Okay, that's... Now, the most important part was, they said you must spend 75% of your money on advertising, okay? And you must spend it with these specific consultants. Why? What if I have a better consultant? What if I don't want to spend 75% of my money on advertising? I want to spend it on grassroots organizing and knocking on doors. I was talking to a Democratic candidate for a state office in Iowa last night. She's got 33,000 people in her district. She has 130 volunteers. They can literally knock on each door, maybe twice. So they don't need very much money. Why do they have to follow that memo? Because unfortunately, the Democratic Party, the establishment as it stands today, is also built on corruption. And so those consultants are making hundreds of millions of dollars off of Democratic donors. And they are now telling people, you must support our consultants, otherwise you will not get money from the DCCC, you will not get any assistance, and sometimes they even keep the voter information away from those progressive incumbents. And that is corruption. It's the core of corruption. And then when you say, hey, this is the part of the problem of the Democratic Party, they're like, what do you mean? Well, that's what we mean. So I think the memo was telling, and I think the Intercept building on that and explaining how it's affecting the primary runs of progressives, and it's meant to defeat progressives within the Democratic Party, is the sad state of affairs. But the good news is Intercept with a news story out just a couple of days ago saying that half a dozen progressive primary challengers now are outraising, even their own metric, outraising the incumbents or Democratic Party supported candidates because of small donors. So we can actually win even without their help, and maybe because we're not getting their help. And so this grassroots is bubbling, and I think that in 2018 we're going to begin to see a rise of a progressive army like we've never seen before, and real progressives, not just Democratic Party hacks.
Cenk Uyger, the founder of the Young Turks as well as Wolfpack, thank you so much for meeting with us. My name is MarkAlain Dery, WHIV Radio. Thank you guys very much.